Steve White, TrekBoy89 for Steve Arts 89. I'm currently watching some old Next Gen reruns on 10 Bold, which is fabulous, except they're not the remastered, so they look bad, but it's just nice to see them. And I was on my Facebook, and what did I see but a little article pop up on my Facebook from Bounding into Comics. Now, you couldn't see the whole title. It just read, Star Trek Next Generation star Wil Wheaton thinks Star Trek fans who don't like Kurtzman Trek should, and then you couldn't see the rest of the title was do something else. And I read it and I found it very interesting. Now, it's done by Anthony Pascal from TrekMovie.com. Now, I got my name TrekBoy89 from TrekMovie. It was sort of the big site, I think, back in the day, before Star Trek was rebooted with the JJ Trek films. It's where everyone went to talk about Star Trek, because when Enterprise ended, CBS, who obviously couldn't care less, closed down StarTrek.com and all of that, because, well, we don't have a show to support, so why do we need to have a website up for the fans to interact on or talk on, because they just cease to exist now. We've no longer got a show to promote. So the franchise was pretty much kept alive by fan films and fan sites. And TrekMovie.com was a fan site that was covering the upcoming Trek film, Trek movie. And I was there every day, and it was great. I was talking to a lot of people. Some of the actors, some of the people involved in the productions were there. Bob Orkey was there, and that's where he famously told fans, including myself in that chat, to get effed, and got fired, basically, overall. I think a few things factored into that. But Anthony Pascal, I had a couple of run-ins with him. Basically, when they were talking about George Takei being gay, there were a lot of homophobic comments, and I criticised some of these homophobes, and Anthony Pascal, in his wisdom, allegedly, deleted my posts and other people's posts that were defending homosexuality and ourselves, and kept up the posts for the homophobic people that were talking out against gay people and homosexuality in general, which was pretty offensive. And I tried to call him on that, and he pretty much deleted me from the channel, so I wasn't able to go back and talk and interact with people on that channel. But it's okay, because it kind of was dying anyway at that point, because this was after the films had come out. Because there's this myth that Star Trek fans aren't tolerant and don't want new things, but everyone was so excited about that film and the rebooting, and we're all talking about it and excited about it, and the remastered Star Trek episodes of the original series were out at the time, and it wasn't until after the first film and after and Into Darkness that people realised where the JJ verse was going, and it was far away from Star Trek's roots. So even though I do like the films as action films, it's more the series of the issue. So I don't like Anthony Pascal. I feel he allegedly sold out the fans because he was a fan-based website, and once the Star Trek production started up again, he started to trying to associate with the producers and Bad Robot and CBS and all that, and he started getting access to them and interviews with them, and then he started to censor Star Trek fans and remove Star Trek fans, and it became very much just a shill site, which is really sad, because it was so great back in the day. I have so many threads that I kept because the conversations were so great. And I miss it. I still use TrekBoy89 because that's where I got the name, and some people still know me from that, vaguely. But yeah, this is really interesting, because when I met Wil Wheaton a few years ago in Australia, there was no Star Trek in production. This was before Discovery. He hated Wesley. All he could do was bag Wesley, and he was just joining in with all the people trashing him and basically saying he was embarrassed to have played that character and embarrassed to have been that person. And I was really offended by that, because I was about 13 when I first saw Next Gen, and I was living with my single mother, and she was raising me and my sister at the time, and I related to the character, and I thought he had a lot to contribute, and he was a really... I literally said to him, I think you're being too hard on the character, and by extension yourself, and how I related to it and that. And he sort of looked at me like, mm-hmm. And I was really surprised by his attitude. But now in this interview that we see after Star Trek's back in production and he might be able to get a role, suddenly he loves Wesley. He's proud of Wesley. He's bragging about Wesley. And I'm like, where did this come from? Where was this guy when I was standing in front of him? He wasn't there. So I found that really interesting. Now, people are asking, he basically, look at the interview, he's basically saying, it's exciting now. My mouth is really dry. It's exciting now more so than it's ever been, maybe more than it's ever been. God, my things are... Okay, yeah. He's working on a new film, and they talked about that. It was asked about franchise fatigue. He's saying, I don't really think that exists. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, either you like it or you don't. Either come out and participate in the storytelling or you don't. And it's a giant world and there's lots of people in it, and if you don't like it, God bless you, go do something else. That's fine. That's just the way it is. Now, that's not that controversial. I'm not that bothered by him saying that. I kind of feel that way to an extent. If you like the new Star Trek, fine. If you don't have to watch it. But the problem is you used to have Star Trek to watch. Now in its place you have New Trek, which isn't the same thing. It doesn't have the same optimism. It doesn't have the same intelligence. Doesn't have the same evolution of humanity. It has just negativity and gender politics, and I'm gay, so it's not a homophobic hating women thing. And there's this painting all the Star Trek fans with this brush that if you don't like the show you have to be homophobic or misogynistic or racist. I'm not none of them, but I have a problem with the show because of its philosophies, because it's just all the things it does and does wrong and does that aren't Star Trek. But he doesn't even get into all that, which is what they're trying to imply. He observed, you're never going to get you're never going to be all things to all people, and noted that if you try to end up being beige, well, that's kind of boring and uninteresting. You think Star Trek is exciting now, like I said, it's, maybe more than it's ever been. That's why that made no sense. That quote was out of context in how the interview was printed. There's just so much wonderful storytelling happening, said Wil Wheaton. And there's the great cast, which is kind of true in some cases with the actors, bringing such great stories to life right now, and it's a wonderful moment to be a Star Trek fan. No, there's no great stories. Just the fact it's being produced doesn't give a whole lot to fans if what's being produced isn't Star Trek and doesn't give you what the old Star Trek did, which was intelligent science fiction stories. All they do in this series is preach political things, gender politics, and just their political views, and they just see it as a platform for ideologies. They don't actually see it as a storytelling device. Like, they don't. It's just so sad the way it's gone now, and to see him praising it. And when he was asked about the new shows, which one is him most interested, he was talking about Lower Decks. He thinks it's funny, which calls into question his sense of humour. He basically said, yeah, if you reverse the A and B plots in Next Gen, that's basically what you get. He interviewed the showrunner and that, so he sort of likes them. On the subject of Lower Decks, Pascal would note that a couple of weeks ago in a metaverse panel, Lower Decks showrunner Mike McCann said he'd love to bring Wesley into the show, asking if Wheaton would do the show. Of course, he said, yeah, of course I would. I'd do it in a heartbeat, and honestly, I feel like the animation is probably the only place where Wesley could exist in the most faithful, canonical form right now, which I'm surprised he cares about canon, if he likes New Trek. And despite praise for Lower Decks, the actor also specified that Star Trek Picard is his favourite thing now since Next Generation. Nothing comes close. Yeah, how can you have worked on Next Generation and love Picard? It's the absolute opposite. It undermined everything Next Gen did and the character of Picard. So why is he saying this? Wheaton also expressed his interest in making an appearance on Star Trek Picard, and that if they were interested in me, I would do absolutely anything I could to get to yes. Everything. I can't read. So, okay, that's why he's interested in that's why he's suddenly loving Wesley Crusher, suddenly loving Picard and the new productions, because he wants to get on the show, which is natural. I think all the Star Trek stars, most of the Star Trek stars, the Next Gen era ones, are playing down the problems with Discovery and Picard because they do want to get on the show, because they want to act, they want to work. So I can't totally blame them for that, but it's the syndrome we see where, like all the Next Gen films, they praise them while they're working for Next Gen in Paramount, and as soon as, like Marina Sirtis was all amazing for it, as soon as she felt like they're not going to hire me again, she was trashing them like nothing else. And she toned it down a bit as she's working for them again, but it didn't really help. She didn't get invited to the Star Trek panel. I think that's because of how she's been speaking, because she's still fairly honest about her opinion, whereas everyone else is playing ball, which is a bit sad to see. But he did compliment Wesley, and I do believe he's correct about Wesley. It's just it wasn't his attitude before. He said, Wesley showed a generation of young, smart, awkward people who were told to shut up by adults in their lives, that their experience was valid and that their ideas were valid, explained Wheaton. They were smart and they had things to contribute to the world, and that idea that they would be invited into a space by adults because they were smart and then told just to be quiet and sit down was insulting to us and frustrating to us. He took a moment to discuss, basically he thought Wesley was not treated well, basically. He was maligned and he got a lot of, the character was oversimplified, blah, blah, blah. He got a lot of crap from people in the 80s and 90s. We all know that. It was fun to make fun of Wesley. And that's what he seemed to be responding to when I met him. He seemed to still be reacting to that. Like, I'm not going to try and argue with these people. I'm just going to agree with them so I can come to the conventions and get paid, basically. And again, he was asked on the topic of fans who took issue with Crusher's character. Wheaton wished that he could go back and tell young him, that he was having such a hard time because of how cruel people were to him, that these people don't necessarily represent the audience, and they're not really worth your time, he continued. They are objectively wrong. And that's pretty much where the interview ended. And I would kind of agree with that. There is a small fringe of Star Trek fans who really don't like Star Trek, don't like any of the themes and that, and they're just using Star Trek now to for their political motivations and agendas. So there has always been that fringe element, but that's not the majority then, it's not the majority now. And I just find it really fascinating that he went from hating and being ashamed of Wesley to now trumpeting him, now that it's politically, it works to do it, basically, and he's trying to get on the show. So I just read that and I thought, wow, that's a real change of tune there. I really have to comment on that. I find it really funny. But I think he's actually right in that Wesley was a great character and he shouldn't have been treated like that, and he should have respected himself more and defended the character sooner. But I just find it fascinating. So I just wanted to comment on that, and that took way longer than I thought. And sorry I didn't read that out very well. Partly it was because of how the interview was printed on the online article. It had a lot of ads in front of things, and little blockers in front of some words, so I had to work out what is that sentence? Sorry. I'll do a better job with my notes next time. Thanks. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. Thanks.